Hey there guys, so I'm back today Monday at 5, and now every week Monday at 5 I'll be back telling my stories and answering more questions. Today we're talking about coming out to my friends as well as coming out with the help of my school and talking about how they helped me throughout that whole process. As I've briefly talked about in past videos, it was really hard for me to start to open up to my friends. The confidence, like having my family accept me and support me and coming out to them first definitely gave me some confidence to kind of move forward with this process, but I still hesitated a lot because the idea of people being able to accept me for me was still really hard for me to believe in. And I don't remember how long after my appointment with Quest that I've talked about that I kind of started this whole coming out process. As I talked about with coming out to my family, it took me about a week to tell my sister, and probably I would say a week or so after that, I started kind of coming out to other people as well. Somewhat thrown together plan for this time period was just, go into high school because I was in grade 8, that just not telling anybody, go into high school as a guy and just kind of live life like that and go from there. And that wasn't the best plan. My mom was really encouraging me to work with my school. One, because a lot of people from my middle school were coming into high school with me because we were in the same area code. And I think she was just worried about the problems that could come from me not saying anything. And I was also worried about the plan working in a whole. Well, it was my plan and I really wished it could happen like that and it could be that easy. I did know that people talked and I did know people were going to have questions if I just did this and didn't say anything. So when it got to this point, because of those two reasons, because my mom was worried about it, this plan working, because I was even worried about this plan working, I started to become more open to actually what my mom was saying and look into how my school could help me with this coming out process. And so with the help of my school and a person named Jay Wallace, I had a meeting, and Jay Wallace was there to make sure that the school was giving me all the support they should be giving me. My mom was part of this meeting. My principal, Miss D, and my favorite teacher at the time, Miss Raynor, was there because I knew she always had my back, and that really helped me during this meeting because I was so nervous about it. This is the first time that I'd started to think about talking to other people and coming out to other people, so I was very nervous still, again with that same topic of whether people could accept me or not. And so we set this meeting and we worked, we had the idea of going and talking to my school, but for me, I was before I tell my school, it feels really right, I should be telling my friends, or at least my closest friends. And there was two friends in particular that I thought that I should have to, I wanted to tell, because, if I'm going to go and start this whole process with my school, that, they were close enough to me that I kind of felt that they had the right to know. And I mean, no one has the right to information, but as a friend and the kind of friend I am, I wanted to open up to them before I opened up to my school. And so I started by telling my second closest friend. We got some lunch in a restaurant close by my house, and I just kind of had a very casual conversation with her. I was telling her that I wanted to go by him and he pronouns, and that I was transgender, and that I was transitioning to be a guy. And what was kind of mind-blowing is that this conversation didn't, she was accepting, and this conversation didn't last very long. It was about 10 or 15 minutes, and there was only she had a few questions. I don't even really remember what exactly the questions were. I know they were just kind of a few clarifying questions of what exactly does this mean? But it was a 10-15 minute conversation, and then we went right back to being friends. And I remember this just gave me a lot of confidence, especially going into telling other people, and even just my best friend Max. Some of you guys watching this video know that he's been my best friend since grade 3, grade 2-ish. So it's been a long time with him being my friend, and I was nervous to tell him more than my other friend, just because he was my best friend, and kind of what I talked about in previous videos of being worried that something that really matters to you not accepting. So I was just a little bit more nervous, but telling my other friend really gave me the confidence to move forward with that. And I remember we walked home from school. A lot of the time we could walk home the same way. We were walking home from school, and I planned it so that close to his house, so that if anything went bad, I could just walk away. But I remember when we got close to his house, I started saying the exact same thing I said to my other friend, that I'm transgender, that I want to be referred to as him and he pronouns, and that I was transitioning to be a guy. And what I remember from that conversation is that everything, he was acceptive and he was cool, and I couldn't tell that anything changed from our friendship. And I mean, later on, like years later, he actually did open up to me, and he did say that he had a hard time fully understanding and that he did need to take some time to process. And so like without me even noticing, for a couple of days we actually didn't hang out while he took time to process. And you know what's really interesting is I actually find that very respectful. He took the time that he needed to go and process what he needed, but not for 1 second did he make me feel unsupported or bad for being me. He was always very kind and respecting and taking the time to process, and that's completely okay. As people, we need time to process certain information that we get, and that's okay. You're not supposed to just understand everything all the time, but the important part is being respectful and kind during your time that you need to process. So that was telling my first 2 close friends, and my other friends don't really talk about too much in this video because all of the friends that I told after this point happened very individual to each friendship. It came to a point where like I said, it comes to a point in a friendship where I feel like I want this friend to know this information about me. It feels right because we've gotten to this level of trust. And so all of the friends, it was very individual. It wasn't like told at a specific times. It was always just when a certain level of trust was reached. So after telling those 2 closest friends, I was more mentally ready to start working with my school and work towards telling other people. You know, I told all the important people in my life. I told my family, they were accepting. I told my 2 closest friends and they were accepting, and that really kind of gave me the confidence to go and tell other people. And like, it was still really hard for me to like get to this point because even before I came out as trans, I was bullied just for being me. So I had no idea what to expect from like coming out as trans, and like if people would accept me, and that whole if people could accept me, I've talked about it a lot, but it was such a huge repeating thing in my head of like, oh, like I don't know if anybody's gonna ever be able to accept me. So it was something that like took a lot to overcome. And so going back to the meeting, what's interesting about the meeting with my school is like was that I don't fully remember like the whole meeting. I remember sitting in our circle, you know, Jay Wallace, my mom, Miss Raynor, Miss D, and me. We were all sitting in a circle talking. I remember like what we covered in topics. I remember, you know, we talked about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to pursue my coming out process. We talked about how the teachers could help me, how the teachers could help make me feel safe if ever needed. And that was really helpful. And I just find so interesting with this moment is that while it was such an important moment, I think because so much was going on mentally at the time, it's still kind of is blurry in my memory. So it's so funny how when you're going through something mentally, how even very momentous and important moments can kind of turn out blurry when you're looking back. But what I do remember is feeling super accepted and super supported by my school. And that was really amazing. Like my school was really great at supporting me in a time that I really needed it, and my mom and Jay Wallace were really great at advocating for me, especially in that meeting where like sometimes you know, being 12, 13ish, like I sometimes didn't have the words to express what I need to say, and that's when like having Jay Wallace, having somebody that's there to advocate for LGBT rights throughout like schools and throughout like transitions was really great, and then having my mom, someone who always had my back, was really great and who understood what I was feeling to also advocate and help me get to a point where we had a program that everybody felt like confident with. And I mean, the plan that did come out of that was that like all the teachers were just going to start referring to me as he and him pronouns, and like everybody was going to catch on. And while I don't think any of the teachers really fully believed in that, at the end of the meeting we did leave, they all agreed to do that, and we like moved forward from there. And why I thought this plan was going to work was because a problem / just something that happened a lot when I was younger was that anytime that someone referred to me as a guy, people I think thought they were sticking up for me, / I think sometimes just want to talk about me, would always like correct them and say I'm a girl. And I can see why some people would do that, especially when I hadn't come out as trans, and I was being referred to as a girl. But it got to a point where, you know, like it'd be like a no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, because the person didn't believe I was a girl. And then it would kind of last to the point where like they'd still be debating, and I'm like, so I'm gonna leave now because it doesn't matter if I'm here. Like, while this conversation is about me, it's weird how sometimes it still seemed like they were talking about me, even though I was there. Like, I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird thing, but because of that whole concept, of like people would always correct like everybody. I would kind of like play it off like people would correct the teachers, and the teachers would be able to have this one-on-one conversation with the students and explain what's going on, and kind of keep myself a little bit more distant from telling all these people, and a little bit more protected, because it can be overwhelming emotionally, and that like plan kind of worked, because what ended up happening is about like a week or so after we had this meeting with my teachers, Miss Raynor, my favorite teacher who had really had my back, kind of pulled me aside and was like, can I talk to you? And so during recess I came back and we had a conversation. She was like, so in class today, like you came up, I referred to you as him, and several people at once tried to correct me. And I could tell like I was really nervous, and right away I was kind of embarrassed, like my plan in the first week didn't work, and then I was just kind of nervous to hear what she had to say next, and I could tell that she was kind of nervous to tell me what happened. And she then proceeded and she told me that, because I talked to her about like correcting students, and because several students at once had corrected her in class, she actually decided and thought it would be the right moment to go ahead and like correct those people and tell them what was going on, while also like kind of telling the whole homeroom at that point. And surprisingly, I actually wasn't mad at all. I was quite relieved, because it was something that they needed to know, especially like moving forward into high school, but something I was terrified in telling them, and something in all fairness, like my original plan, like this was kind of what it was building up to. Well, I didn't think that. I mean, looking back, there wasn't too many more outcomes than something like this happening. So, I respected what she did, and I understood because she did it in a respectful way. But let me make this very, very, very clear that it is not okay to out your trans friends. It is not okay to out your trans family. It is not okay for you to say that like as a cool point. It is very much up to them, and why this point was okay is because like we previously had a conversation with me saying like I want you to correct people. That's how I kind of want to transition. But it is important that if you haven't had that conversation, that outing a trans friend, family member, or someone that can cause really really impactful and bad, emotional trauma. So it's always, have a conversation with your trans friends and respect their wishes. And in this example, Miss Raynor did respect my wishes, but was put in a difficult position, and a position that we didn't fully talk about. But because she did always have the back to her students, because she was such an amazing teacher, and I did really trust her and respect her when she told me that like she thought it was like the right move from there, I did really respect that and trust her on that. And from what she told me, like they actually received it quite well. So overall, like it wasn't a bad thing to do. And then so like after she told the class, within a week, everybody knew, right? Like she told 28 kids or something like that at one, or like 22. I don't really know how big class sizes are anymore. She told like 20 something kids at once. So obviously like within like a week of that happening, everybody knew. And I don't actually remember there being too many problems with it, like in the end of grade 8, because I did it like towards the end. So in the little bit of me coming out to the end of the school year, there wasn't a lot of like people being dicks, which I was really happy with. And I think having a really supportive school really helped with that. And I had problems with being bullied, but it was more like past bullies that were coming back with new fuel, like people that always bullied me for being me, coming back and like using trans as fuel against me. And while it wouldn't work now, at the time it did work. But kind of going away from the main point, because the people that did bully me were not actually a part of my school. And so I'll maybe talk about that one day, but for right now, I want to focus on like my actual friends and my school, because that actually went over fairly well. But even with that going over fairly well, like I wasn't in a great place mentally still. Like it was still a really hard time, and while people accepting me helped, I was still struggling with accepting myself. And so that like led to a really rough hill, and like a hill that had a lot of ups and downs throughout high school as well. So from like the beginning of middle school to the end of high school, I went through a lot of waves and levels of depression. And something that really helped me, especially being so young and in grade 8 with that, even into the continuation of like the beginning of high school, and even like kind of to this day, Miss Raynor is always kind of giving me someone that I can talk to if I need to. And especially in grade 8, especially in grade 9, she gave me an outlet of someone that I could talk to about being trans. And as I've talked about like in previous videos, I never talked to my friends about issues of being trans. I really didn't want to draw more attention to being trans. And sometimes while I did it, like have the outlet of talking to my mom, sometimes when I was like talking about being scared of going to school, it would make her worried. And then I didn't want to like talk about it because then like I'd be making her more worried, and it kind of made things more complicated. So having Miss Raynor to go and talk to every day was really, really amazing, because it gave me a person kind of separate from everything to be able to talk to. And she was really amazing because, you know, unlike other teachers, she didn't bullshit, she didn't baby, she was super real and just was honest with me and there for me and supported me. And why, like, it was just really amazing. And, you know, she always, like, whether it was like her doing her like catching up on work, or, you know, her husband was the music teacher at school, whether it was like he's doing after like school help, whatever the reason was that she was staying after school longer, she always still made time and space for me to feel heard and feel supported. And it, like, I can't even, like, I don't even know where I'd be if it wasn't for Miss Raynor, because it honestly made such a difference. It's like at that time, having that like outlet of someone that was so distant but so supportive and so caring really went so far in helping me realize, like, even just like my value at the time, because that was a really hard thing to realize and process. And so she was able to help me process a lot of that emotion too. And that just shows, like, if you're a teacher, like, you don't have to take that lightly. Like, you are in a position to really make the difference in a kid's life. I will forever be grateful to Buchanan, and especially Miss Raynor, if you ever see this, by the way, super, super grateful, because they were there in a time that I really needed it and were really, really amazing in supporting me. And on a real note, like, I think that really helped with bullying as well. Like, by having like teachers and the principal and like the whole school very obviously support me and be there for me and be part of my coming out process, I think it made people even more intimidated to be jerks about it, because they knew the school had my back and that it wasn't tolerated. And I say that because, like, I even noticed just the difference between having a school that was so accepting and so much a part of my process to even just like my high school like experience through like staff and student was just so different. So, you know, if you are a staff or you're a teacher or anything like that, like, you really can make a difference, not just like on a personal level, making the difference with a kid, like on a level of like even how other kids treat someone coming out. You kind of have the power of controlling that to a certain extent by showing your support. So yeah, I think schools can be really helpful in the coming out process. So that's kind of it for this video. You know, that was how I came out to my two closest friends, which is the main, like, the friends that I want to talk about in this video, because as I said, you know, like, all my other friends kind of happened at an individual time when a certain amount of trust was built. So that's all for this video. And then I've talked about like my friend, or like my school. So what I really want to show is that hopefully, like, if you're a trans youth or a trans person about to going through a coming out process, that you can see another example of coming out going okay, and then, you know, as scary as it is, true friends will always have your back. And I hope I can open some minds to the idea of working with a school and being able to use them as another support outlet, as well as open some minds of staff and teachers of how much of a difference you can make if you're supportive, because it's insane how much of the difference of a supportive school made throughout my coming out process and in this really difficult time for me. Feeling like I had not only just access to support, but also making the school feel like a safer place, which every kid should kind of have the right to school feeling like a safe place and education. So that's also something I hope I can open some people's eyes to. So yes, thank you guys so much for watching this video, for all your support on this journey. I can't thank you enough. Remember to like and subscribe if you like hearing my stories and hearing all this. Also, my Instagram is in the link in the bio below. Go ahead and follow me on that. You get the chance to answer or like put up questionnaires every week. So if you have any questions for me, you have the chance to ask questions there, as well as just see more constant updates on this journey of being visible. So yeah. Alright, that's all for now. All love, guys. Take it easy.